All right, I'm going to give you guys kind of a crash course on SEO. So I know that a lot of you guys are, hey, this is going to be like our first exposure to SEO. This is our SEO crash course. We're about to hook that thing up to the back of your head, right? And at the end of it, if you guys have seen this movie, The Matrix, where Neo, he like gets the download and then he's like, I know Kung Fu. So that's my goal here, is to have you guys know a lot more than you know right now in the next hour. I believe if I use the right stories and analogies, we can get the foundations and kind of like understand what SEO is and how it works. Let me give you a brief explanation of who I am. This one's me, Patrick Shannon. You'll see in the top left, that is a SaaS platform called LeadSnap that Brian was mentioning. I'm the CEO of 3 companies right now. I say that I have a big team and they're amazing and they make my life a lot easier. But LeadSnap is a software platform that we built, and we started building it in 2017, launched it in 2020. I think it's in 40 countries now, so it's used around the world by marketing agencies. Starting off, I was a tax accountant. That was really boring for me. I didn't enjoy it. I spent the next decade as a professional poker player living out in Las Vegas, spent some time traveling for poker. From there, I went into being a software engineer, which made building a software later on, LeadSnap, easier. I run a 7-figure marketing agency where we manage 400 sites in SEO. So we're in pretty much every major market across the United States. I structured things. Maybe a lot of you guys, the goal with learning AI and automations and these things is so we can pull ourselves out of the business. This is one of the things that I was fortunate enough to do. It wasn't easy, but I pulled myself out of the business. My wife quit her job also as a software engineer, and we spent 2 years traveling around the world. When COVID hit, we came back to the United States, and then we spent a year traveling in an RV. So I mentioned we founded LeadSnap. I'm also a coach in this coaching program called Rank Masters. So that's where Brian and Francis came and spoke as our guest at one of our events. Okay, so let's talk about local search. I know that some of you guys are doing local. For the business owners, this will be more applicable, but the foundations of SEO, whether they are for local or whether they are nationwide, they're going to be very, very similar in a lot of ways. So let's just get some data in here, right? Anybody that is going to focus on SEO, we've got to understand data. Okay, so 68% of online experiences begin with a search engine, and 53% of that is from organic. So if we were to separate out like paid ads or organic search, right? So organic search, right? 70% of searches have at least 4 words. This is going to be really important later on. So if you think, my company, we work a lot with concrete contractors. So if you kind of think of concrete contractor, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So that's 5 words, right? So 70% have that many. I'm gonna circle back to that. Just kind of like remember that. SEO leads have a 14% close rate. That is a fantastic close rate. So it's basically 1 out of 7 leads are turning into a job with SEO. A big part of the reason for that is because there's a lot of intent, right? If somebody is on Facebook and they get shown an ad, well, they weren't searching for that, right? You just dropped something in and tried to match the demographic or maybe some of their past behaviors. But with SEO, somebody's actually searching it. They're raising their hand and they're saying, hey, I want this service. So SEO drives 1,000% more website traffic compared to organic social media. That's a massive number, right? So obviously could be a little bit misleading because some people could be getting closed through social media, and this is about website traffic, but still SEO can build empires when done correctly, right? It can give us a ton of value where we're not subject to paying for every click or paying for every lead that comes through. Let's talk about what Google's goal is. So Google's goal, all this stuff we're about to talk about, is about this. And it's really about trying to give the searcher the best answer. Okay, so everything that we're doing is Google is trying to look at the searcher and provide them with the best information possible. So this is why we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Having amazing content is going to help the searcher, right? When we have a lot of reviews, then the searcher can trust it more. So that's all Google is trying to do. All this other stuff, all this like pony dance, smoke and mirrors, everything else is about trying to convince Google that we are the best result, right? The reason that people go to Google is because they're looking for an answer to a question. So Google has to prioritize and come up with a system to decide who should be shown, right? And everything that we're going to talk about on SEO is trying to position ourselves so that we appear the best in Google's eyes. So this is kind of like foundation 1. If we understand this, you can kind of have your own little litmus test where you say, hey, does this seem like it would serve the consumer with the best answer, or is this something else? Right. So if you look back on kind of like old school SEO, what people would used to do is they would put a keyword that they want to rank for like 500 times on the page. And because Google's algorithm or their system for determining what ranks where was not very advanced at the time, those kind of tactics would work. And the reason that Google makes updates frequently is they're trying to recalibrate the rules to the game because of this reason right here. Does this make sense to you guys? Is this clicking? This is like simplify SEO if we just understand that this is what we're doing, right? If we were maybe we're in a college class and we ask we ask a question and there's a bunch of professors answering, like, and they go through and we said like, hey, which one of these guys answers our question the best? Okay, Google, let's rank that person who answers the question the best at the top, right? And it could be like, hey, this professor, he's got his PhD from Harvard, right? So like maybe we should trust his answer more. So Google's kind of doing the same thing when it's qualifying the websites, as it's looking at all these different pieces to see who should be trusted. All right, so these are updates. As I mentioned, Google is constantly changing the rules, and they're changing the rules. They're not changing the rules to try to like screw people or anything like that. They're just trying to make it better for the people searching. And they change, like these are main updates that have happened. And this slide, I think, is a couple years old, but you get the idea. And honestly, Google is updating things. I think a guy from Google said they were updating things 4 or 5 times a day. That's how frequently they're updating things, but it's small stuff. And obviously the internet is a big, vast place. And there's a lot of like ranking for a local business may be different than like there's a separate where they're e-commerce stores or maybe even informational stuff, Wikipedia, like there's all these different directions we can go on the internet. So not all of these apply to, well, these updates apply to search, but not all the updates that Google does apply to search. So we can just kind of like briefly look through this. In 2011, they started paying attention to repeating the same content and the content not really providing tons of information. Spam links. So these are links from one website. So imagine that you link from, Tom's Plumbing over to Jim's Plumbing. So when you click on a certain word on Tom's website, it goes to Jim. So that's called a backlink. We'll get into that a little bit more. But people realized that that was a valuable part. And Google, people were making all kinds of links from bad sites. And at the time it counted more, and you can kind of see they changed it. They fixed that. The keyword stuffing, this is where they were putting like hundreds of the same keywords on the same page. Sometimes even like making the word be the same color as the background. So that way it would blend in and it wouldn't look weird to the user, but you'd get like the SEO credit from it, right? 2015, we really started paying attention to mobile. And then the October RankBrain, this changed everything. So RankBrain it's like, the reason that it has brain in the name is Google started to, it's almost like AI started before we were exposed to it, and Google's learning now, and it's paying attention to the way things are used, and it's processing that, and it's applying that to the search engine, right? And then in 2018, so this is really important. I don't know if this applies to you guys. Maybe throw it into the chat if it does, but let's, if you're in like finance or medical, there's something called YMYL. This is your money, your life. Whenever this is involved. So for instance, if maybe you are working in like nursing homes and you're trying to advertise for nursing homes, or you're selling some sort of medical procedure, and the possibility of buying that service can really affect someone's life. Well, then Google is going to look at that with a much stronger microscope to make sure like, hey, are you saying stuff that's true? Are you a real company? So this applies a lot to medical. This applies to finance, stuff like this. So if you're in that, you're not going to be held to the same standard as like a carpet cleaner, right? And it makes sense why you wouldn't, because you could materially impact somebody's life in a really bad way. 2019, there's language processing. Helpful content has changed a lot. So helpful content, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to give you guys some strategies on how you can create really good content really quickly for your sites. But it's basically saying, hey, this like garbage content that people are pushing out, especially as AI rolls out, it's no longer going to be good. The content actually has to help people. It has to answer questions. It can't just be content for the sake of content. So the EEAT is December 22. So this is expertise, experience, authorship, and trust, I think, are the four ones. But it's basically how it's a different way that Google is evaluating your website. What proof do you have that you are this person? So I'll get into this more, but just kind of like understanding the updates and how this does really sets the stage.